is that there was a fiscalia, which is a prosecutor, who was shot and killed in Guayaquil.
They found, I forget exactly where it was hidden, but it was 21.5 tons of cocaine.
Tons.
The criminal activity in general, not only homicides, but just like robberies and whatever, any other things, has diminished dramatically since the state of exception or the state of emergency started.
He basically said he understands, that there's been some financial losses and the economy has not been allowed to reactivate in safe areas, which includes most of Ecuador. So he wants to implement this traffic light system to allow a return to more normal conditions for most of the country.
You turn on the 6 o'clock news and you hear about the 74 horrible events that took place that day. That's scary. Like, if you didn't live there and that's all you saw was the 6 o'clock news from somewhere else about that place, you wouldn't go near it. Hello and welcome back to the Ecuador Insider Podcast. Jesse, Brandon, Carl. Guys, thanks for tuning in. Right now, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, but actually do that.
Really do it.
Like, really do it.
Please do it.
A lot of you do it, so thank you.
And it really helps us out, man. It
That's
really
right.
helps us out. Helps spread the message, lets other people see the content we're putting out. So if you really enjoy this stuff, definitely hit the like button. And if you're not subscribed, more than, 55%, I was just looking at the data that half the people that watch aren't subscribed.
It's like 90. It's like 80 or 90%.
Yeah.
I
So
think.
subscribe. If you're watching this and you're not subscribed yet, just take a second, hit the subscribe button for us.
Right. I mean, ladies, who wouldn't want to see this face more consistently?
Oh, yeah.
And, all right. Bad joke. Anyways, we're going to jump into a whole bunch of stuff today. Obviously, we're going to update security and all things security in Ecuador. We'll, of course, continue to talk about that as it is currently something we need to talk about, something that's going on here in the country. So we'll definitely talk about that stuff today. Before we jump into all of that, we are running a lifestyle retreat. This is our sixth lifestyle retreat. We call it the Vilcabamba Lifestyle Retreat, taking place here on
April 12th to April 21st.
And this retreat, it's been a blast for us running. Again, this is our sixth Vilcabamba Lifestyle Retreat. We've kind of had between about 8 and 20-something participants per retreat. It's really been a lot of fun for us, and the feedback from the participants has been incredible. We've really designed it with you in mind in terms of, okay, I want to get the most bang for my buck, the most value, be the most efficient in understanding everything about what would life be like in Ecuador should I decide to move to Ecuador. So that's how it's designed. You come, you stay at a beautiful hotel, you have a complimentary massage, you have some downtime built in, but outside of that, it's really an action-packed 9-day experience where you're going to have a hands-on feel for everything in the Loja Vilcabamba region. You're going to see all the towns, you're going to try all the food, and you're going to have seminars, Q&As, panels, presentations with really some of the country's leading experts on their topic. So whether that's shipping containers or legal or tax stuff or visas or safety or so on and so forth. So it's incredibly informative. We really want to help you guys make a proper decision. It also, again, the hands-on feel is super important, right? So it's a way to kind of kill all birds with one stone, where you come down for 9 days and you probably get the accurate info and experience that you would only gain otherwise maybe in 6 months here or maybe in multiple trips here. The bonds that have been formed on these retreats has been amazing.
Yeah, that's actually great. We create a WhatsApp group for each retreat where the participants can talk to each other and us, and they're still going. Like they're still active and they're sharing. It's like real bonds have been formed where people share updates on their lives, whether they're in Ecuador or not, whether they decided it wasn't for them, or whether they're in plans to prepare to come here. It's really cool to see how tight that's become.
Yeah, and it's awesome to see the people that have decided to move here, have bought property, have built houses, new families are coming in. We just went to a birthday party from a family that they were on one of our retreats about a year ago, so it's really great. New families, great people coming to the valley. always exciting to have that.
So
sure.
check out the link in the description below. You can also check out all our reviews on our Google Maps business profile. Let's put that in the link as well.
Yeah,
If
and
you guys want to check
WeTravel.
on that. And on WeTravel, there's some reviews on there as well. So check that out. We'd love to see you. It's a great time. And we think it's an awesome way to, kind of check that box.
Yeah, and one more thing, we've been getting some feedback that people like the podcast and like the interviews, but they were asking, do you have it in audio only? So we have started uploading to Spotify, Amazon Music, and Apple Podcasts. We'll put links down below to that. So if you like the interviews and the podcast, you can now listen to them in the car or audio versions in those 3 platforms. So we'll put links below and sign up for that.
Yep. All right. Excellent. Let's jump into some of the updates. So the one kind of, and I know Carl had some stuff he'll share, and Brandon as well. The one sort of big event that took place after we've recorded the content that's been released to date is that there was a Fiscalia, which is a prosecutor, who was shot and killed in Guayaquil. I think this is probably the second or third time this happened. I think it was later in the same day we were recording the pod last week.
Right.
So I believe we're recording this on Tuesday, January 23rd. I believe it was 7 days ago, if I'm not mistaken, on last week Tuesday in the afternoon or after we recorded. So yeah, everybody is, maybe you know some of the details on that. I haven't looked into it closely, but clearly this is a retaliation event from organized crime, who I believe that the prosecutor, and you may know the specifics, the prosecutor was looking into a particular matter. And
Right. No, he was the prosecutor in charge of the investigation for the group of terrorists, or the gang that took over the TV station.
Okay.
He was the prosecutor in charge of that. So it seems to me like there had something to hide, because they never actually, like, we still don't know, at least from my understanding is we still don't know who exactly they represented, like what gang or who was behind it. I don't think it came out.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, I mean, unless I'm wrong, and correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but it seems to me like that was the case. So maybe they had something to hide. They didn't want that to come out but yeah, he was driving, I think, most of the time he always had security, because some of the prosecutors and judges that are in charge of these investigations, sometimes they get death threats. Like, it's very common, right? So he happened to be driving, I think, somewhere where he didn't have security around him, and yeah, they shot him. So very unfortunate situation. There's another prosecutor, Diana Salazar. She's all over the news. If you research Ecuadorian news, she's in charge of another big case, metastasis, like this, where just basically bringing up to the light a lot of the corruption in the justice system with some of the cartels and some of the things that have been going on. And her life was threatened multiple times. She's still out there, fighting the fight, and she's basically like almost like a hero now. Like, people really are very, very proud of what she's doing, because she's putting her life on the line basically for the country and her, principles and values. So it's a tough job for sure to be a prosecutor or a judge in Ecuador, right? Because they're in charge of these big cases, and they receive death threats from cartels, from gangs. Sometimes they threaten their families and stuff like that. So it's tough thing.
Yeah, and so obviously, our thoughts and prayers, of course, to the family, our condolences. Obviously, when there's loss of life like that, in a small country like this, where people are very tight-knit and close, and the sort of communal and family ties go very deep, it affects people, and it's super sad. And obviously, looking at it from a bigger picture, political picture, stability picture, it's very important that, people are able to perform their duties without that. And that's kind of the battle that's being waged right now. Yep. The government trying to get full security control over the country, and, really have enough strength that these things stop and don't, don't continue. Let's see, there was something you had said earlier that I don't remember what it was that might play into this. Did you want to jump in?
Well, President Noboa spoke out yesterday, and he announced a plan for a green light or a traffic light system. So it's essentially, they're going to identify certain areas of the country that are safe, and certain places that are unsafe based on their their metrics, and they're going to traffic light. So if you get a green light, curfew's lifted. They're going to he said they're going to formally announce that today, and it's going to be implemented shortly after. Okay. But let me just read a couple of the quotes from the BOA. Yeah, he basically said he understands, that there's been some financial losses and the economy has not been allowed to reactivate in safe areas, which includes most of Ecuador. So he wants to implement this traffic light system to allow a return to more normal conditions for most of the country. He added that although there will be relaxation of rules in safe areas, they will remain in cantons that continue to experience frequent incidents of gang violence. So, in addition to a plan to remove the curfew for majority of the country, he also said that he expects to extend the 60-day state of exception for another 30 days because he doesn't believe that this problem can be solved in 2 months.
Sure.
So they're taking it really seriously. He's doing. It's clear that these were, appear to be necessary because of the sudden eruption of prison and gang violence. So we need to do some things, and he needs to do some things to curb that and stop that. But having those implemented still in the rural areas and the safe areas, it's where we're not seeing that type of event. It's kind of nice to hear that,
yep.
Right? And it's good for people that aren't here that can see that. They're like, look, it's not, because it's easy to paint the whole country with a broad brush when you see a story like this.
Yep.
And we do our best to try and share at least what this region is like for us living here. And hopefully when we see the traffic lights were green, I don't understand
For
why
sure,
we wouldn't
for
be.
sure.
It seems like we should be. So
I think a big part of this is the Carnival is coming up as well. And I don't think that, well, it's a huge economical factor, right? A lot of businesses, they make their main income for the year during Carnival. So I think sounds like certain areas, certain regions are going to be open for Carnival, but not all of them. Another big aspect of that is children were still not in school, right? Public schools closed. Is that correct, Jesse?
They're back now.
They're back now.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I just read 70% of schools of students will be back in school.
Yep.
But there's still about 30% of schools that
Okay.
are. That are
Yeah, and maybe
probably in Guayas,
regional. I don't know.
probably regional.
Here they're back.
Yep.
yeah, and I think, and he talked about it's going to depend on, like, the curfew and the school stuff is going to relate to the traffic light system based on safety and criminal activity in that specific region. He also updated on, what did he say here? They've arrested 158 terrorists, as well as many more accused of criminal activity. He said that they've dismantled gang headquarters and seized thousands of firearms, as well as explosives and ammunition. And they've also collected and destroyed many tons of cocaine. And I think you mentioned you saw reports of a large.
The big headlines yesterday. It was all over. It was on. I went shopping last night. We had dinner. Anyways, whenever there's a TV on, that was what was on TV at the time. They found in Vinces, Los Rios, they found, I forget exactly where it was hidden, but it was 21.5 tons of cocaine.
Tons?
21.5 tons.
That's like hundreds of, is that $1 billion
That's
of
what
cocaine?
they estimate, yeah, just around $1 billion. I think they used the $40,000 a kilo. Right.
Was there like 900 kilos in a ton? I don't even know.
No idea.
Kilos? No, a ton is 1,000 kilos, right?
A ton is 1,000 kilos.
I think so.
This is the metric
900
system
tons,
versus
yeah.
non.
Right.
Yeah, so there's 21.5 tons of cocaine that they found. That's a lot of cocaine. So yeah, just about $1 billion worth.
That's a ton.
Yeah, that's 21.5 tons. Yeah.
Wow.
So that's a big blow on whichever cartel. But I mean, at the end of the day, in all seriousness,
Johnny Depp loves you right now.
you can arrest as many little thugs as you want, but it's going to keep continuing. It's going to continue as long as these cartels have so much money that they can use, right? Not only to bribe, but to hire, sicariatos, like all of that stuff. So if you hit them where it hurts, which is economically, you take their funding away, then they lose a lot of power. So that's clearly
that's
what Ecuadorian
interesting.
government's trying to do. You mentioned some stats. I mean, I have them right here. I can read them
Just
quickly.
before you mention that, so another quote from Noboa on this was the daily average of violent deaths.
Hey, don't steal my stuff, Jesse Bear.
In the country?
No, Jesse Bear. No. The daily average deaths in the country has dropped from 28 to 8. And most of these are in the 6 provinces where, the heavy criminal activity has been taking place. So they've seen a dramatic decrease. And again, most of the violent, the murders in Ecuador are related, are criminals on criminals.
Yeah.
They're related to the criminal drug trade, the international drug trade anyway. But even those have been reduced dramatically, since this state of exception has been implemented. So,
Yeah.
I can't believe you did that.
It's
Wow.
all good. Don't worry.
I'm
Yeah.
here for you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I read, I don't know exactly statistically, but the criminal activity in general, not only homicides, but just like robberies and whatever, any other things, has diminished dramatically since, the state of exception or the state of emergency started, because, well, everything's closed from 11 p.m. to 5 a.m. So a lot of crime happens through the night typically. So I think Ecuadorians feel a lot safer, really, just because this has been implemented. And there's military in all the major cities, so people overall, the Ecuadorian people feel good. I mean, every time I jump in a taxi, every time I speak to local people, I ask them, "What do you guys think about what's going on?"
Right.
They say, "Oh, estamos jodidos." They say that a lot.
Yeah.
But overall, they think, "Oh, what the government's doing is really good, and we're in good shape. Like it's looking." They're very hopeful. So.
Have you guys gotten feedback from locals about the U.S. involvement and the U.S. coming here? So
Yes,
I've asked a ton of folks, and I get mixed. Like half of the people are happy and they want the support from the U.S. government, and then the other half are like, we don't want this. We're fully against this. We can do it on our own. Or I'm not sure. Like I'm getting a mix from people that I've talked to about that.
Yep. No,
Is
there's
that similar to
definitely
you
a mix.
guys, or?
I mean, I haven't canvassed that topic personally, but people here hold America in general in pretty high regard.
Yeah,
Ecuador locals. So
Yep.
it wouldn't surprise me if folks were, relatively on board with that idea. Now, of course, it can't happen right now. It's against the Constitution.
Exactly.
Well, sorry, support can take place.
Right. Yes.
But they
The
can't,
military base.
Right, they can't have a military base. There's limit to I believe even to the support that other countries can offer constitutionally within the country. Noboa has mentioned that. He had an interesting interview on CNN in English.
That was
which
pretty good.
We'll put that in the
Yes.
link in the description as well. People can check out. And we've got a pipe dream of interviewing Noboa on the channel. We've got an in. It's
We'll
very
see.
unlikely to work, but
Highly
you never know.
unlikely.
You never know.
But we
So
can
maybe
hope.
we'll get 2 minutes. Who knows? But and we did interview Andres Paulo the other day on the channel. That was released recently. It was yesterday or the day
Andres,
before.
yeah.
So if you want a sort of a local insider's perspective on the current crisis, on the current situation,
Local
check that out.
Quito, right? Not local.
Local to
Vilcabamba.
Ecuador, right?
Local to Ecuador.
Right, and I think, I know you're going to jump into some stats here in a minute, which is great, but just to sort of, I think it's important to set some context to this stuff, because generally speaking on this channel and on this show, like we don't really sit around talking about nationwide Ecuador news,
Right.
because it's not really, it's not really relevant to our lives and this area and so on and so forth. And it's usually just not on top of mind, right? This is, of course, a big enough situation that we do feel it, and it needs to be talked about. And so here we are talking about it, but it's important to put that into context. Like when we're talking about these operations, and we're talking about people being arrested, and we're talking about all this stuff, this is many hours drive away from us. Like this has nothing to do at all with this region. I don't know that there's been a single operation in this region. Maybe there was that I don't know about, but I haven't heard of a single operation. Nobody's feeling any different here. People are just living their lives here. This has nothing to do with this region at all. This is Guayaquil, this is maybe Manabí, this is probably Esmeraldas and some other areas. I don't know. I'm sure they're doing some stuff in Quito, although I don't know that. But essentially, most of this is the coast. Most of this is focused on the drug trade on the coast, which operates essentially through the ports, mainly out of Guayaquil, and we're reporting on it because we're in the country. But it's not any different than like talking about what's going on in New York City, living in Idaho. It's
Right.
not that it's not any different really than something
Yeah.
like that.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, Guayaquil is this. I mean, is it a 10-hour drive from here?
Yeah,
Eight,
it's
about
10?
like if you you go straight, 7, 8, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say the only thing that I know took place in Loja is when there was organized terror attacks throughout the country, in the jails and the TV station. There were like 7 or 8 cars that some little thugs burnt in Loja, or just threw some gasoline and lit them on fire. And they were all arrested, from what I understand. And that was
Because
literally
they
took
filmed
place.
themselves
They filmed themselves.
and
right.
sent it out.
They were all arrested, but I haven't heard of any other like busting of anything in Loja or in the Loja province actually. So, and part of that too, I was going to jump in. We'll put this on the screen right now as I'm saying it. There's a list here for 2023, but for all of 2023, the amount of homicides per 100,000 people per province, and Loja is one of the lowest ones. Loja is 5.8 per 100,000. Guayas is 84.5. So it's
where
more than
Guayaquil
10
is.
times. Yeah, where Guayaquil is.
Maybe next week we'll do the in-depth safety conversation where we really try and give you good perspective on crime, different types of crime, different parts of the country with some of this data.
Yep.
We're working on getting some more granular data as well to share, but we've got some data to share, and we can do a full-on episode to really kind of ground everyone on what it's really like here.
Yeah, definitely.
Did you have some other stats you wanted to
Yeah,
share?
I can run through them really quickly. We did that on our last episode, so I don't want to like waste too much time.
Yeah, and maybe some of them I think last week weren't super relevant. Like maybe just the relevant ones.
Yeah. So last week we had about 1,900 people that were detained, and these are updated weekly, by the way. So this is from Sunday, the 21st. This will be updated again next Sunday. So we don't have daily stats; it's weekly stats. Now we have almost 2,763 people that were detained. So almost 1,000 more. We had 5 terrorists that were killed. I think it was last week was 3. There's 31,539 operations. We were closer to 20,000 last week, so it's quite a bit more.
Wow.
More than 1,000 firearms were confiscated. More than 1,200 knives, 1,222. A lot more munitions and magazines. It looks like 126 magazines, 35,000 munitions, ammunitions, 500
bullets, it looks like, basically, yeah.
Right. Yeah. Municiones, bullets. 538 vehicles were confiscated. 15 boats. We have 4,802 explosives, 353 motorcycles, 18,000 gallons of gasoline, 1,092 cell phones. Now, this says 10,538 kilograms. So that probably did not include what was confiscated yesterday. That will add quite a bit to this number.
of the cocaine.
Kilograms of drugs. Kilograms of drugs that were confiscated. Yeah, that's basically it. So every week, they're updating. There's more, and they're. I sent some of those pictures to my family. I didn't want to scare them, but I sent some of those pictures where you see the military with all the all the weapons and the drugs and the things and the people they arrest, and they're kind of like taking like a group photo, right? It's very staged.
They do that everywhere.
They do
Like,
that everywhere,
when they
yeah.
do drug busts in Chicago,
Okay.
in the States, in Mexico, like they do the same thing.
They all do that.
The
Okay.
only difference is that here they cover their faces. In the U.S. they do not.
Right. In the U.S. they're proud.
Oh, the police and military
Yeah,
cover their faces here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is a big issue. I mean, if you have a military man, actually, a video came out of some gangster, and he was saying, basically calling for, these military guys. They feel like they're all tough when they're in their uniforms, but if we find out who they are, then when they're in civil, we can basically hurt them and whatnot, right? So clearly, the police and the military don't want their identity to be known because they could become a target from the criminals. So.
Yeah, and if you guys want to follow some of this stuff, the Ecuador Interior Minister has a Twitter, an official Twitter account, and they push out updates pretty frequently on their official Twitter account. So we'll put a link below to the Ecuador Interior Minister. Is that what it's called? Interior Ministry? I don't know how.
Ministerio del Interior, yeah.
Yeah.
maybe.
Say it again.
Ministerio del Interior.
That one.
I would assume that's.
But yes, Interior Minister would be the translation.
Put that in the link down below. Yeah. No, I mean it's pretty impressive. Like there's countless photos of that, and sometimes they find a couple of guns and a few cell phones and like basic stuff, like little stuff. But it's just every day there's multiple photos of everything they find, and you know they're really trying to crack down on these guys, and it's I don't know, it's inspiring to see, you know, they're actually doing something. The people here are in favor of what's happening, and that's the most
No,
important
I mean,
part.
I think since, like, look, the safety and security situation in Ecuador has been getting worse for the last whatever period of time you want to put on it. My perception would be sort of since COVID, basically. Some people would argue longer, shorter, whatever. I would say sort of since COVID, that's really when it started to change. And partly that was due to a massive migration wave. Like we had from Venezuela mostly, and then also Colombia, but it was just, I mean, mostly Venezuela. Yeah. I mean, we just had, you know, tens and tens of thousands of Venezuelans when their country basically collapsed and people were starving, and so, you know, totally understandable, right? I would leave too, right? Totally understand. But we had a flood of immigration, and these were, I've talked about this before on the pod, but in Venezuela, these were the people who were left in Venezuela. The wealthy people left Venezuela when Chavez got elected in like 1998, and then the middle class left in the mid 2000s. You know, so it was, you know, it was actually like there's no food, and people were leaving. So, you know, that changed the country. Like that was a difference. You know, in Loja, for example, in Loja, which is this very interesting place where it's, you know, it's this sort of part of the country that's kind of been off the map, off the radar forever. It was hardly accessible by road, like not that long ago. You know, the airport isn't that old. You know, it's just this sort of very proper, formal, close-knit, trusting, you know, place, right? And that's sort of the vibe of what the culture in Loja. There was no such thing I lived in Loja for many years. For all the years I was here, there was no such thing as a homeless person, and there was no such thing as anyone asking for money ever. Like not one ever, from the time I got here in 2013 up until 2020. Now you have not a lot, but you have some of that. They're all foreigners. They're 100% foreigners. They're 99%, 90% of them are Venezuelans. There's a few Colombians, but that, you know, you saw a difference in sort of like, oh, there's new people here now. There's a little bit of a different element here now. And I'm not talking crap about Venezuela. My ex-wife was Venezuelan. I've been there. It's a beautiful country. In the 70s, Venezuela was one of the wealthiest countries in the world. They've had very unfortunate governance starting in 1998 and basically collapsed. And there's been a whole criminal element. It's a very dangerous country now. So again, you know, this is not a prejudice thing. It's just what happened. So, you know, we've seen those differences. There was something I wanted to go with that, which I'm forgetting, but yeah. So I don't know. That sort of concludes the 6 o'clock news portion of.
Before we conclude that, we I don't know if you guys watch our channel. If you probably watch some of the other Ecuador channels. So we're working on. We're gonna sneak peek. We're working on an interview with Jesse from Fall Off the Map. If you guys watch him, he's got some really unique perspective on. He's been here for, I think, as long as you. I think he got here. He's been here 13 or 14 years.
Nice.
He's got a family here. He does some farming, but he's got some unique experience in, you know, parts of the world that he's been to, and you know, his take on cartel and criminal activity. He's got a really unique perspective. So we're working on getting that in the schedule for you guys. So look forward to, if you want to see that interview, type Fall Off the Map down below in the comments.
Yeah, we're going to also, I had an interview set up with a guy whose channel is called GM Ace as well.
Yeah.
So we'll be chatting with him, get his thoughts.
Cool.
And he's a local as well. He's an Ecuador native, I should say, or I don't know, local native. He's Ecuadorian, so he'll give his thoughts as well from a local perspective. But yeah, I kind of remembered the second half of that point. So, you know, it's really. Break-ins, more events like that. I would say really in the last like 2 years. Does that jive with
2 3 years?
2 to 3 years? Yeah.
Since COVID, really.
Okay.
Since, the pandemic, that definitely made it worse.
Yeah. And so, you started to have, even in this region, you started to have to worry about your security more than in the past, right? If you heard me 5 years ago, my spiel on security here was like, it's super safe. Get it, if you're going to build a nice house, get a dog, get a fence, do a couple of deterrents, but that's it, right? You're good. Now, there's been enough sort of consistent break-ins and things like that this region is not accustomed to over the last couple of years. That's changed, right? You need a little more security now than you did. What I'm very, very, very happy about, and just makes me want to like jump up and woohoo, is okay. Wow. is woohoo, woohoo, baby. Well, no, but what's really, lends itself to a lot of optimism is the way the government is facing this problem, like the way they're attacking this problem, and the way the country feels about it, the population, and then backed up by these statistics, right, where we're seeing, violent crime goes from 28 to 8 during these operations. And we're seeing the statistics you just mentioned. They're actually giving a full-fledged, real effort to get rid of this in the country.
Right.
This is fantastic. Like this is such glorious, news.
Mm-hmm.
It's woohoo news.
Woohoo!
It's such good news because it's been this sort of awkward thing for the last couple of years where Ecuadorians are not used to this, don't want it. Are sort of like, this is happening in my country, but what do you do about it, right? Like, what do you do? Well, now it's come to a head, and we're doing something about it, and that, for me, is just fantastic. You've got Noboa. One of the real problems is that under Moreno and Lasso, I guess, let's see, Lasso came in when? In 2020, right? Yeah, so I guess most of that would have been under Lasso. The borders were wide open. I mean, literally just wide open. Like, people were just walking across the border, no papers, no nothing. And again, you can have your views on that. I tend to be more sort of libertarian kind of minded, so I'm not someone who's like, all that. I'm not someone who's always pushing more government and more rules and more, security and all that kind of stuff. That being said, if you're going to have countries and you're going to have governments and you're going to have police and all this kind of stuff, you need to have some sort of check in place to say, okay, who's coming in, who's going out, are they a criminal, do we want this, and you had, again, tens of thousands of immigrants just walking into the country from both borders, also from the Peruvian border, over a multi-year, stretch. Noboa now has, mentioned, he has said very clearly that that's going to be addressed, that we need to get, he's going to get control. He's actually implemented now, even just across the border on foot, and maybe you can look up the specifics on this, but it's something like you have to prove you're not a criminal. You have to show like a criminal history now just across the border on foot. This is great news. Right. Like this is I've been saying for years, talking to friends, and like, man, they got to do something about the border. They're doing it. Like this is.
No, that the downside for that is for someone who's like American or Canadian just traveling through, right? They want to take the bus from Peru, come into Ecuador, and now all of a sudden they need to have a background check to be able to cross the border. And that's something that never happened. So I've seen some travelers being like, well, the only way I can get into Ecuador is go to an airport and fly in now. Because through the border, they add me, I don't have a background check. I don't carry that around when I travel, So, but yeah, it does make sense to have that.
I mean, a little Photoshop action would probably do the trick, but
maybe,
But no, 100%. Yeah, so it's not in place for air travel, just to be clear about
exactly.
that.
That's correct. Yes.
All right.
That's correct.
So that concludes the 6 o'clock news
6 o'clock
portion of the program. And I think even that is kind of interesting. I had a thing that occurred to me the other day as I'm scrolling my YouTube feed, and I see and this is in the news.
All
People,
the Philadelphia Philly fans crying.
Eagles,
Or
Eagles.
Eagles, sorry, yes, Eagles. Crying in your soup.
Yes. I don't know. Philly's a pretty tough city, man. I don't do a lot of crying. They don't do a lot of crying in Philly.
You're the only
they
one?
do some. Yes. So, I'm scrolling my YouTube feed, right, and I see, Carl doesn't like our back and forth. I see a video about the Medellin, which in Colombia I think they say Medellin, but in Ecuador they say Medellin. The Medellin phenomenon of tourists getting drugged and kidnapped and held for ransom, right? So it's a thing that happens in Medellin. It's something that's known about. If you Google it, you'll see 10 trillion stories. If you go on YouTube, you could see 10 trillion videos, right? And so what was the thought that I had in my head? And I've had this thought for years, right? So, okay, let me back up. I've never been to Colombia, okay? We're next to Colombia, but I've never traveled to Colombia. So I don't have personal experience there. The only thing I have is whatever I come across online or talking to people. I have friends here who are Colombian. I have lots of friends who travel there all the time from here. But what is the thought that I had is like, man, I'm not going to Medellin. I'm not going to I'm not going to Medellin. I'm not going to Colombia. It evokes fear, right? Yep. To see a story like that. And I want to I just want to sort of compare that, right, to like our good friend who comes on the channel occasionally, Milton, who's from here, who's Lojano. He goes to Medellin all the time. He says it's beautiful. He says go. He tells me I should go all the time. If I'd been there, I probably would have zero fear about visiting Medellin. I'm not going to be in the clubs at 2 a.m. trying to pick up girls, so I don't think I have to worry about, getting because that's kind of what they do. It's kind of through women that they, they get guys to maybe they kidnap them or they drug their drink or whatever, right?
Yep, that makes sense.
Well, I'm not going to be doing any of that stuff. And in truth, talking to Milton, talking to my friends who are from there, I could go there without any concern at all, right? But if I'm just paying attention to the internet, I'm not going anywhere near Medellin. It looks terrifying.
Yeah.
And I just want to make that point because I think the 6 o'clock news back home does the same thing, right? You're living your life. You're having a normal life. You spend the day at the park with your kids. You come home, you turn on the 6 o'clock news, and you hear about the 74 horrible events that took place that day. That's scary. Like, if you didn't live there and that's all you saw was the 6 o'clock news from somewhere else about that place, you wouldn't go near it.
Right.
Anywhere.
Right. That'd be like if in the U.S. if they put every day on the news, they put the missing children number.
Right.
Every day. I mean,
you wouldn't visit the country.
I think the last FBI data I saw was like 2,300 children in the U.S. go missing every day.
Wow.
That's 1.6 a second. A child goes missing. If they report that every day in the U.S. and there's going to be some cities and some regions that have a way higher rate, if that's the average, there's way higher rate because then there's going to be some regions that don't have any, or very few children go missing. So, you'd get terrified. Like, it's so easy to take this data and if you're constantly in your face and that's all you focus on and all the bad things that are happening in the world, if you focus on that, that becomes your world, that becomes your life, that controls you, that controls your actions. So it's wild times. Like it definitely seems like not only with social media are we exposed to these terrible things, but it seems like the world is getting, and we've talked about this as, the world's getting a little more dangerous, as people, are further away from God, there's more death and more, controversy and more crime in the world. I don't know.
I of course completely concur, but I definitely like that you enjoy pissing people off on the channel. You want to talk about Trump now?
Trump 2024.
Before you jump into Trump, 'cause we can go there if you guys want. I think all of us probably have that same experience, right? When the presidential candidate Villavicencio was assassinated, how many messages did you get from your family members and friends? Are you guys okay?
Right.
Same thing would just happen recently. Like, we got countless messages from people because in the international news media, that's what you see. Ecuador looks like a scary place. People think we're endangered, living down here.
Yeah, it comes from a good place, right?
Of course, it comes from a good place. Yeah, yeah. But even though Ecuador is a small country, not every region is affected the same when these things happen. But it is a good point. And actually, I've always thought I don't really want to visit Colombia because it's dangerous.
Right.
'Cause that's all I hear about Colombian cities, what you mentioned, and other things. The guerrilla, and there's cartels, of course, lots of cartel activity in Colombia as well, and the military is fighting the cartels there as well. So to your point, I think a lot of people will decide not to visit Ecuador because of what's going on right now, if they had planned on doing it until things settle and maybe
Sure.
It looks better.
And that's a good point because, we've said this many times, but Ecuador really isn't for everybody.
No. Of
course.
South America isn't for everybody.
Of course.
It's not, you could make the argument that most people from the West, from the United States and Canada, Ecuador's not right for them.
Yep.
It's so, yeah.
No, and I think that's actually a good transition into sort of talking a little bit about this area and good and bad reasons to come here, right? Because I think if you have fear, right? Like if you are fearful, why would you go to somewhere that you have no clue about? That everything's going to be different.
Right.
Like that's going to increase your fear.
Right,
Yes.
because that drives a lot of people's predominant fears, the fear of the unknown. So if you're
Right.
going to somewhere you don't know, you're like fueling that.
Of course.
Yeah, and I think as for us that live here, right? Like, and we've made this point a lot of times, but I think the thing that keeps the three of us in and around this valley is the people that live here. It's the community, right? Like for me, there's a million places to live in the world. Yes, the weather's incredible, and yes, there's all kinds of things about this area that I love. But I'm sure there's other places in the world that have similar characteristics in those ways. Mm-hmm. The thing that this place has for me, and I think for you guys as well, that sets it apart are the people, the community, right? It's just an amazing set of people that live here. Like I love the people in this community. I love, the amount of just real, amazing, sort of even spiritual, people who are doing awesome stuff and many of them are very accomplished and just really cool people that live here is the thing that keeps me, in Vilcabamba.
Yeah. Just want to jump into the word like-minded. There's really, the community here is really like-minded. Even though we disagree and we don't agree on everything, there's a thread, there's a similarity with people seeking freedom, people looking for the truth, truth-seeking. The majority of people here, they don't just believe what they hear, right? They look in multiple, alternative views on different topics and stuff like that. People want to be healthy. The health factor, that's a huge thread that most people here have in common. They want to come here, have fresh food, breathe fresh air, drink pure water, and live, healthy lifestyles.
Right, and so that's the point. Come for that.
Right.
Come for that. Come because you want those things, and you want a level of freedom, and you want a community that, you are supportive and that you can have great friends and the kids have their whole thing and all the parents and, come for those reasons because you want to have interesting conversations, and you want to grow food and whatever you're into. But come for those reasons, those things. You want to experience a different culture, and it is a very different culture. Come because you want to slow down, you want to relax, you want to sort of, those are great reasons. But don't come if it's fear. Like just don't, because you don't add to the community, right? Like if you're coming down here to take your US or wherever sort of fear-based mindset, the world's falling apart, which it is. It's not, it's not about the facts, it's about how you feel about it, right? But that sort of mindset, and then you're coming down here to sit around and be angry with your friends and complain about stuff and be afraid of things, and that's like what you're gonna do. Not only are you wasting your time, right? You're gonna probably end up leaving because something's gonna piss you off enough that you're, F this, I'm out of here, type of thing. So you're probably gonna waste money, waste time, waste energy, so on and so forth. But it's a detraction from what we got going here, like.
No, the community really is cool. Like if you are into, a lot of the things you guys just discussed with growing your own food and, organic farming and sustainability or regenerative farming. There's constantly workshops and classes and courses and people are doing this stuff in the community to teach other people how to do it, and they want to share their knowledge, and some of these people have been doing it their entire lives, 30, 40, 50 years worth of experience in this region, maybe not 50 years in this region, but in that topic, and many years in this region, applying their expertise. So, you can learn about homesteading, you can learn about organic gardening. You can learn about watersheds and how to do permaculture on mountainsides. And people have really developed that, and they want to share with the community. They want other people. They're looking for other people that are interested in it, right? They're happy to share that. So the community really does come together and share that, that expertise, that insight, that know-how. And then, come on, Jesse, who wouldn't want, if I had a problem and I needed some help, and it's like, dude, I'm scared, something's really going on, I need some help, and I could call this beefcake and he'd be there in 30 seconds? Come on, man, come on, let's see it, Carl. Let's see the guns, Carl. Come on, that one, there you go. Dude, he'd be there in a second.
Thanks, Brendan.
You're welcome. No, but for real.
No, the level of support is important.
Honestly, though, obviously we're having fun, but you would be.
Sure.
If I was, I know that you would be there. If I needed you to be there because something was happening, I know you would be there. And I hope you know that I'd be there for you, right? But
yeah, thanks, brother. Yeah. That's true. The community is united. Yep. And, as you're saying, there are people here who, there's things to be afraid of everywhere, right?
Sure.
Like, we just had a lovely couple that came to visit, and one time he came to the office and he's like, I was sitting over there at this restaurant, I won't name names of places or people, but I was sitting there at this restaurant, and this lady came and was like, this is a really dangerous place, I'm leaving because this is really bad, and they got scared, right? Because some people are really afraid, and as we said in the previous episode, like, there are some things to be afraid of, but clearly we're not afraid enough to leave, right? And there's thousands of people, a couple thousand expats here that are living here because they're not afraid enough to leave. Otherwise, they would go somewhere else. But yeah, when you come to a different country, you don't speak the language, you don't really understand the culture, most likely because you don't speak the language, and everything's new, as you're saying. There's things that you could be more afraid of, right? But I think the more time you spend here, the more you spend time learning the language, the more you meet people, you seek to understand the culture. There's a lot of things that will make you feel better about living here, and less afraid. The fact that the community comes together, the fact that people care about each other, the fact that, you can call on your neighbors and friends if you need something, and they'll be there for you.
Yeah, you guys are familiar, of course, with the term, what is it, ugly American, type of thing, right? And I never really understood necessarily when I was young, what that meant or where that came from. And maybe I understand it now or not, I'm not sure. But one thing that's really occurred to me is that in the U.S. culture, kind of a way of life. It's kind of very normalized back home. That's what you kind of have to drop to enjoy life here. And life here forces you to drop that.
Yep.
So, don't get me wrong. I was high. I still am a little high strung, maybe, but I was high strung. I had tons of stress. I had all that stuff from my upbringing and living in New York and going about my business back home. Coming here has been such a gift for me to actually learn that from the culture here. Oh, everybody here just kind of rolls with the punches. Ecuadorians I'm talking about. Everybody here just kind of rolls with the punches. Everyone kind of just accepts what is. People don't really get too stressed out about anything. People don't fight with each other really about anything. You'll never see verbal disputes in the street or ever, literally ever. I think in 10 and a half years here, I've seen Ecuadorians yell at each other twice. And it was shocking both times. It was like, whoa, what is happening? Maybe that's a little more in the coast or something, but in the Sierra, that just doesn't happen.
They're humans,
Sure.
But yeah, it's much more frowned upon here to express anger, you don't typically get your way if you get angry at someone.
No, not at all. Right. So this place is an invitation to relax. It's an invitation to come, grow some food, have some good relationships, drink a juice, go to the river, enjoy nature, enjoy some of the 10 trillion amazing things that you're mentioned that go on in the community, whether it's classes or workshops or get-togethers or hikes or, all that kind of stuff. And leave that stuff back home, because it is frowned upon here. You can't be stressed out and angry here and be successful, because Ecuadorians don't rock with that.
Yeah.
So you're not gonna, people are not gonna appreciate that. And is that really the way you want to live anyway? I mean, it's not the way I want to live.
Yeah.
So, where are we going from here? We only got 10 more minutes, and I got to get out of here. But we're in. You had something?
No, go ahead.
Can we see? Yeah, we've got what looks like to be a nice day today. We're in the middle of rainy season. So rainy season in this region, in much of the country, but not the whole country. In this region tends to be, it's different every year, but rainy season tends to be November through May. Around June, the rains stop, and then it doesn't rain again until October, November, thereabouts. Rainy season is the favorite season for many people, and dry season is the favorite season for many people. So it really just depends on preference. But you can get stretches during rainy season, not super often, where it's cloudy for a number of days, and we just came out of that. Sun for me is like half the reason I left the U.S. was winter and the lack of sun. So I love how much sun we get here. But we kind of had a week of relatively cloudy days. Yeah. Now it looks like we're back to some good weather. Hopefully this goes for a while, but it's kind of a misnomer. Rainy season, people think it rains constantly. It doesn't at all.
Right. Well, and like I have friends and family back in the States, and if you look at like weather.com or you look at any of the weather, it looks like, if you put Vilcabamba or Loja, it looks like it's raining every day for months and months. If you look on the wet, which is clearly not true.
Yeah.
Right. So it's people get that perception built in, like, oh, rainy season, it rains all day every day. No, it doesn't. And it's not even like other rains in other parts of South America. Like in Costa Rica, they get sheets. I mean, they'll get sheets of rain for extended periods of time. And rarely, if ever, do we get rains that hard for that long, at least in this region.
Yeah, it does happen. My understanding is the heavy rains come from the coast. The lighter drizzles, which is what we get most of, come from the Podocarpus from the east, from the national forest. So that's what we get most of in the rainy season. There are some downpours, typically February and March. The rain's a little worse, typically, at least from my experience. That's when you get some of the heavier rains. But, if there's a downpour, it might be like an hour or two, a downpour. It's not like days and days of just lots of rain. So, but it does pour, sometimes. It feels good. It's nice.
Yeah, I mean, when it rains here, it's
like
nice.
Like Carnival is known to be raining, for
Yeah.
example. February, like mid-February, whenever Carnival happens, it's almost like all that energy needs to be cleansed or something.
I like that.
No, seriously.
No, yeah,
Carnival
totally.
is like, I wouldn't say debauchery, but it's like people are
Kind of.
drinking, partying, eating.
It's a giant party.
It's a giant party. It's a lot of garbage is left in the park. So luckily, we have really great municipal employees here that are cleaning the streets, swiping and cleaning the streets every single day. So
and people help out. People help out. Yeah.
That's right.
Has there been any official announcement from the government on Carnival yet?
There has, but with the semáforo, with the traffic light thing, that might change. But there was an official thing from the Vilcabamba mayor, or the Presidente de la Junta Parroquial, where he says that all the Carnival activities will be suspended. Like there won't be any bands and music and all of the things that typically
so
goes
not
on.
that you can't hang out and do your thing, just that the normal program that the government puts on is not happening this year here in Vilcabamba.
For sure. So that may change, or we're just speculating.
Speculating.
Okay.
Speculating that. But yeah, Loja province should be in the yellow or green. I would assume it's definitely not much happened here. But the kids go out, throw water balloons, and do all that. Like that's going to happen, almost certainly. Actually, I'll jump on that real quick. Chino from Chino's Bikes, the bicycle shop in town. He approached me yesterday, and he wants to do something special for Carnival this year, like basically a whole bike tour. So he'll invite all the local community. We'll be inviting the expats, I guess, and we'll do like almost like a pregón, or like a, what would you
Parade?
call that? Like, we'll just drive through the streets and
Yeah.
go up on the trails and do like a little tour with groups of people, and
Cool.
with water balloons and water guns, and do the thing. Vilcabamba probably won't be as packed as it is in other years because of what's going on. Vilcabamba, I think, like they say 30 or 40,000 people come
it's
to Vilcabamba
wild.
during Carnival.
Wild.
Like the whole town square is packed, a sea of people.
And no violence.
That's right.
Right.
No
Right.
violence.
Like, speaks to the culture.
Speaks to the culture. Yeah. Yeah. What I was told when I first got here is during Carnival, stay home, pack some food, stay home. Don't go to town. Don't go out. Just stay in hiding until it's over, and then you can go back to your normal life. And I did that for a couple of years, and
Did you?
eventually, yeah, I did. And eventually, I was like, let's go check it out. We had a newborn baby, so I walk around with him, and I thought if I'm carrying a baby around, they're not gonna throw water at me and stuff, right? Which was true. Yeah. People were extremely respectful, and I was like, oh, it's not that bad. And as my son grew up, he's like, let's go to Carnival, let's go throw water balloons. So
The kids love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, even my mom was here for Carnival. She's pushing 80, and she was here for Carnival last year. And she, of course, didn't like it because she doesn't want any noise or anything. But she's had a couple of stories where her and my daughter are walking in town, and they're going to get, water balloons and sprayed. And she's like, please, no. And no one touched her.
Yeah.
No one touched her.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
it's
You're
totally, people are very
Yeah.
kind and considerate and
Of course.
respectful.
The only time this could happen is if like a little kid is excited.
Sure.
And they can't compute, They just like to do stuff like that, but they're not gonna do anything bad.
Yeah,
but
I
it's
mean-
all fun. Like
Yeah.
people they love it. Like they love, like the old grandmas get sprayed, but
Oh, yeah.
they're laughing.
They laugh about it.
Yeah,
enjoying
yeah,
it.
Right. Even you'll see some guys that have suits, businessmen. They'll walk through and they know if they walk through town, they're gonna get pegged, and they'll be on their phones doing their business, walking in their suits, and a kid will spray them with foam, and he'll look around, and just laugh about it, laugh it off.
Yeah.
Kate's here right now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So she came just as this whole Ecuador international news story kind of broke out, and she came and what is she thought? Has she talked about it?
No,
nothing.
it hasn't even been.
Hasn't
I
even
don't,
been
that I
done.
can recall, it hasn't even come up. I was surprised that she saw the news, that international news, and still came, but
Right.
she came no problem. I mean, and again, in this area, if you didn't follow the news, you wouldn't know that
Sure.
there's anything going on.
Yeah,
So
Right.
We have an airport an hour away. You could fly out, without having to go through any of the major places. Yeah, my in-laws are here as well. They came in the day
They
that
came
it
in
happened.
about the same time too, right?
The
Yeah.
exact day that this happened, they were sitting in the plane, and there's an announcement on the radio. We just want to let you know, Ecuador just declared state of emergency. If anyone wants to get off the plane now, this is time to do it. And a couple of people left the plane at that time, but they weren't too fazed by it. So
Oh, really? Some people walked up. Oh, that's
Yeah.
funny. Yeah, that's interesting.
yeah,
And
I mean, understandable.
They're enjoying it. They're not.
yeah, of course, yeah. And my mom's getting here tomorrow, and
Wow.
my dad's gonna be coming in February. My sister as well. So
Awesome.
everyone's
Yeah, my dad's coming down in a month, I think, next month or the month after as well. All right, last kind of topic that's very brief that I wanted to jump into. I don't know if you guys have other stuff, but
We're kind of out of time.
we're out of time as well. Yeah, we had a right. So we had a short that we put out.
Yeah.
And full disclosure, we have an AI program that does our shorts. So we have limited manpower, limited resources here. So our great photo video guy Fernando, who does all our photo video stuff, asking him to also try to take on shorts on top of that would be too much on his plate. So I'm an AI program that puts out shorts, and the word Trump was mentioned on a short out of context, and I think I don't even remember if
In the
people
title,
in the
yeah.
title. I don't remember if people thought you were supporting Trump or not supporting Trump. I actually don't recall, but whatever it was, it really triggered people.
Oh, yeah.
And this just kind of speaks to what we were talking about earlier, like the divisiveness in politics and just the divisiveness in general that you have back home. Like, God forbid you hold a different opinion than me, which in this case wasn't even your opinion. You
Right.
were referencing someone else's opinion.
Right,
You just couldn't tell in the short. But God forbid, we hold a different political view. We should now scream at each other on the internet and insult each other and call each other names. And this is just kind of like what goes on back home. one of the great things about here is that this does not go on here. Whether you are hardcore socialist or you're hardcore, free enterprise type of, idea here, you're fine with each other. You
And everything in between.
and everything in between, right? And that's really one of the, again, it's the kind of cultural stuff of everything here is just a little more relaxed. It's one of the things I really appreciate.
And it doesn't mean you're hanging out with all these, all the time, or like you're. But
Well, again, but I'm talking about the Ecuadorians. I don't mean the foreigners. The foreigners foreigners are as nuts as we are anywhere. But I just mean I'm talking about the Ecuadorians. Like if you're a local here and you support Correa, for example, or you supported like back in the day Noboa's father when he was running, who's somewhat opposite political spectrums, like you're not mad at each other.
No.
You're not yelling at each other. You're not having. You might run into all the same social circles and hang out and be friends and in general you're probably not even going to talk about it all that much. And if you're talking about it and you realize there's a disagreement, it's fine, and you probably keep talking about it.
Yeah.
It's okay. Like it's okay, guys. We don't have to fight about everything. So that's all.
Yeah,
All
Jesse loves it. Whenever I post something about Rafael Correa, he's always like, thumbs up, well done, my boy, my socialist friend. And I'm still invited on the podcast, so it shows a lot.
Right. All right. I was about to get inappropriate. I'm not gonna do it. Yeah. Okay.
Let's cut it.
Let's do it. We got tagline.
No, let's do it. If you guys made it this far and you're not subscribed to the channel, please take a minute, subscribe to the channel, give us a thumbs up if you like this content. Remember, put some comments down below. If you have questions, put them in the comments. We try and answer all the questions we can. We're looking to do some live Q&As, so we'll answer some of those in the future live. But if you have questions, put them in the comments. If you want to see the interview with Jesse from Fall Off the Grid, or Fall Off the Map, Fall Off the Grid, Fall Off the Map, put Fall Off the Map down below. We're in the works on that. If you want to listen to this content in another format, we're putting some links down below. You can check out Spotify, Amazon Music, and what was the other one? Apple Podcasts. So you can check out the podcast there as well.
We hope to see you here one day.
So until then,
We'll see you next time.
ciao guys.
If you're interested in real estate properties, all of our property videos will now be uploaded on a different channel. Please click the link in the description down below.